Welcome back to The Gracious Voice, the place where we don't just tell stories, we tell the stories that were almost never told. The stories of the brilliant, the overlooked, the pushed aside, the hidden. The stories of people who the world tried to write out of their own chapters and who picked up the pen anyway. If you are new here, welcome. You found this channel for a reason. Hit that subscribe button and stay close, because what we share in this community has a habit of finding you exactly when you need it most. And if you have been here before, you already know. Some stories don't just inspire you. Some stories rearrange you. This is one of those stories. My name is The Gracious Voice, and today I want to tell you about a woman named Amara. A woman who was hidden, mocked, erased. A woman with a birthmark on her face that the world decided made her unworthy of being seen. A woman who cooked in the shadows for 5 long years, while others took her glory, her credit, and her name. And a woman who in the end did not just survive what they did to her. She bought the building. Stay with me, because this one is going to stay with you. A black Mercedes pulls up outside the most prestigious restaurant on Victoria Island, Lagos. The door opens slowly. A woman steps out. She is dressed in a tailored ivory suit. Her natural hair is crowned high on her head like a throne she was always meant to wear. Her heels meet the pavement with a quiet, deliberate confidence that stops people on the street. And on the left side of her face, bold, visible, absolutely unapologetic, is a large reddish-brown birthmark that sweeps from her cheekbone all the way down to her jaw. She doesn't cover it. She doesn't turn away from the cameras that have gathered outside. She stands in the full Lagos morning sun and lets every single inch of herself be seen. Because she has earned this moment, every second of it. The restaurant she is about to walk into, she built it with her hands, with her sleepless nights, with 5 years of invisible, stolen, uncredited genius. And today, she owns it. Her name is Amara Ose. And everything they did to try to stop her, it only made the story better. Let's go back to the beginning. Amara Ose was born in Enugu, the 3rd child of a civil servant father and a seamstress mother who made beauty out of whatever she was given. A lesson Amara would carry her entire life without knowing it. From the moment she entered the world, she carried 2 things that would define everything. The first was a large birthmark on the left side of her face. Reddish brown, unmissable, the kind of thing that makes strangers stare and children ask questions their parents answer in hushed, apologetic voices. The second was a gift, so rare, so extraordinary that it didn't have a proper name. It was not just skill. It was not just technique. It was something older than both of those things. An instinct, a language, a frequency that only certain people are born tuned into. The feeling people got when they tasted her food. It was her grandmother, Mama Chinwe, who first recognized it. Amara was just 6 years old when Mama Chinwe lifted her onto a wooden stool beside the firewood stove, pressed a wooden spoon into her small hand, and spoke words that would become the foundation of Amara's entire life. Cooking is not about following instructions. It is about listening to the fire, to the food, to the person you are cooking for. If you listen hard enough, the food will tell you exactly what it needs. Amara listened. From that day forward, she never stopped. By 12, the neighbors were finding reasons to visit their house around dinner time. By 16, she was catering family celebrations across the neighborhood. By 22, she had completed a professional culinary program in Abuja, graduating at the very top of her class. Her instructor, a man who had been teaching for 15 years and had never given the award before, handed her the prize for most outstanding student and told the audience, "I have taught many talented people in this room, but I have only ever taught one genius, and you are looking at her." She arrived in Lagos at 24 years old, hungry, brilliant, burning, ready to show the world everything she had. What the world showed her instead would have broken a person made of anything less than what Amara was made of. La Maison d'Or, the Golden House, was the undisputed crown jewel of Lagos fine dining. Gold curtains that caught the light like a ceremony, Italian linen on every table, a wine cellar that took 3 years to curate, clientele that included senators, oil company executives, foreign ambassadors, and the kind of old Lagos money that doesn't need to announce itself. To get a reservation, you called 2 weeks in advance and hoped. Amara walked through its service entrance on her first morning and felt, for one small luminous moment, that she had found somewhere worthy of what she carried. That moment lasted until Mr. Bankole, the head manager, called her into his office. He was a sharp-faced, efficient man who had built his career on knowing exactly what the restaurant's wealthy clientele expected and delivering it without deviation. He looked at Amara across his desk. He looked at her face, at the birthmark, and then he folded his hands and said the words she would hear in her sleep for years to come. "You cook well, Amara. Your trial dishes were exceptional. Some of the best I have tasted in this building. But this restaurant is a complete experience. Food, ambience, presentation. Our customers dine with their eyes first. I think you understand what I'm saying. You will walk in the back kitchen. You will not interact with customers. You will not appear in any marketing materials. Do your job well and you will be compensated fairly. Are we agreed?" She was 24 years old, new to a city that didn't know her name. 6 months behind rent, she had promised her mother she could manage. She agreed. And so began 5 years of invisible excellence. 5 years of arriving before sunrise to source the freshest ingredients while the city was still asleep. 5 years of developing new recipes in a worn notebook tucked into her apron pocket. 5 years of training junior chefs who were later promoted above her. Of solving every kitchen crisis quietly. Of being the answer to every problem and receiving credit for none of it. The menu she built from nothing became famous across West Africa. Her pepper-smoked sea bass was ordered frozen and flown to London for a Ghanaian billionaire's birthday party. Her cassava soufflé with truffle foam was described by an international food magazine as a love letter to the African palate. A quote that ran across 2 pages beside a photograph of a man who had never made the dish in his life. Her slow braised oxtail in palm wine reduction reportedly caused a sitting head of state to close his eyes and sit in complete silence for 30 seconds before he was able to speak. None of it bore her name. All of it bore his. His name was Chef Emeka Adeyemi. Tall, charming, with the kind of easy smile that photography loves and a personality that filled whatever room he entered without effort. Emeka went on television. Emeka gave the press interviews. Emeka accepted the culinary awards at glittering ceremonies, standing at gleaming podiums in expensive chef coats, while somewhere across the city, Amara watched on a small laptop screen and held her grandmother's words in her chest like a coal she refused to let go cold. The flame doesn't care what the pot looks like. She said it to herself like a prayer. Prayers are hard to hold on to when you watch someone else win your trophy for the 5th consecutive year. The kitchen staff knew the truth. They all knew. When Emeka fell ill and Amara ran the full kitchen alone, the food was somehow even better, richer, more inspired, more alive. Critics would return from those evenings raving that the kitchen had outdone itself. Nobody connected the dots publicly. Nobody dared. It was a Tuesday in March when everything began to split open. A celebrated food documentary crew had flown from London specifically to profile La Maison d'Or for a major series on the rise of West African cuisine. They wanted access to the creative mind behind one of the continent's most talked about restaurant menus. Mr. Bankole had prepared a flawless performance. Emeka in a pristine white chef's coat, the beautiful hostess Temi positioned elegantly nearby. A carefully rehearsed narrative about Emeka's vision and philosophy. Amara had been given her instructions clearly. Stay in the back, stay quiet, do not speak to anyone from the crew. But midway through filming, something went catastrophically wrong. The crew had specifically requested the cassava soufflé, La Maison d'Or's most celebrated dish. Emeka, who had watched the dish be made hundreds of times but never actually made it himself, attempted it twice in front of the cameras. Twice it collapsed. The crew's patience was visibly thinning. The lead director, a sharp, perceptive Jamaican-British woman named Patricia Clark, who had filmed kitchens on 4 continents and had an instinct for authentic talent that had never once failed her, walked into the back of the kitchen looking for a solution. She found Amara. She watched in complete silence as Amara rebuilt the soufflé from scratch in 12 minutes without consulting anything, without hesitation, with the focused calm of someone for whom this dish was as natural as breathing. When Amara slid the soufflé onto the pass, Patricia hadn't moved from the doorway. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. "Nobody," Amara said without looking up. "Just send it out." Patricia looked at the dish, then she looked at Amara's face, at the birthmark, at the stillness, at the particular unmistakable dignity of a woman who has learned to make herself invisible and has decided that this is the price she pays for doing what she loves. Something shifted in Patricia's expression. She said nothing more. She picked up the soufflé, she walked back out. But she did not forget. 3 weeks after the documentary crew returned to London, Amara was called into Mr. Bankole's office. This time, the restaurant owner's wife was present, Mrs. Folake Adegoke, immaculately dressed, perfectly composed and possessed of the particular coldness of someone who has never had to be anything other than beautiful and arranged their entire worldview around that fact. She had always watched Amara with a distaste she rarely bothered to conceal. They told her the restaurant was restructuring. They said her services were no longer required. And then, as though the wound required a final, precise twist, they told her who her replacement would be. Temi, the hostess, the striking Instagram famous hostess with 200,000 followers, no professional kitchen training, zero professional kitchen experience, and a smile that photographed so well that management had decided it was worth more than 20 years of combined culinary excellence. She will bring a new energy to the brand, Mr. Bankole explained. Amara sat perfectly still. She did not cry. She had decided years ago that she would never give this room that. She asked one question. Will any of my recipes remain on the menu? Mr. Bankole had the grace at least to look uncomfortable. The menu belongs to the restaurant. She nodded once. She stood. She reached down and untied her apron, the one with the small embroidered flower she had sewn herself on her very first day, young and hopeful, and not yet knowing what was coming. She folded it carefully. She placed it on his desk, and she walked out of La Maison d'Or. The months that followed were the darkest of Amara's life. She applied to other restaurants, but word had traveled, the way cruel words always travel in closed industries, quickly and quietly, and always slightly distorted, that she had been let go from La Maison d'Or. In a world built on reputation, that was enough. Doors closed before she reached them. By the 4th month, her savings were gone. She called her mother in Enugu every Sunday and said everything was fine. Her mother, who knew her daughter's voice like a hymn she had been singing her whole life, did not believe her. But she also understood that some dignities must be protected, so she said nothing and waited. There were nights when Amara sat at her kitchen table with her notebook open and thought seriously, not fleetingly, but seriously, about giving up, going home, accepting that some fires simply get put out and that there is no shame in ordinary. It was on one of those nights, a Wednesday in November, electricity cut, one candle burning low on the table, that she opened the notebook to its first page. Her grandmother's handwriting. Faded, but still there. My love, the world will try to put out your fire, but a fire that has cooked 1,000 meals is not so easily extinguished. Amara pressed her hand flat against the words. She stayed like that for a long time. Then she wiped her face, picked up her pen, and started writing new recipes. The call came on a Thursday morning. Is this Amara Ose? My name is Patricia Clark. We met briefly at La Maison d'Or. I have been trying to find you for quite some time. Patricia had returned to London, sat down in her edit suite, and discovered that the most powerful footage she had captured in 6 weeks of filming across West Africa was 12 minutes of a woman with a birthmark rebuilding a soufflé alone in the back kitchen, with a focus so complete, so pure, so entirely undivided that it looked less like cooking and more like a form of prayer. She had not used the footage, she hadn't had permission, but she had carried what she saw with her every day since. Patricia was a judge on Nigeria's Top Chef, a new national culinary competition with a grand prize of 10 million naira and a career-changing development deal with a major hospitality group. I think you should enter. And I think when you do, you should cook exactly the way I watched you cook that day. Like no one is watching. Like the food is the only thing in the world. Amara held the phone in both hands. The candle wax, the notebook, the embroidered flower left on a desk. Send me the application, she said. She arrived at the competition with no team, No sponsor, no school pedigree to announce. Just Amara, her knife roll, her grandmother's notebook, and 23 years of accumulated fire that had never once been allowed to burn in public. The other contestants were younger, louder, better connected. Several had studied in Paris or London and mentioned it often. Several already had personal brand deals and agents. They looked at Amara, at the second-hand chef's codes, at the quiet, at the birthmark, and they made the calculation that people had been making about her entire life. They underestimated her. It was, as it turned out, the worst decision any of them made. Round after round, Amara cooked with a precision and a creativity that left the judges reaching for words they weren't sure existed yet. She did not perform, she did not narrate for the cameras or turn her process into entertainment. She simply cooked with a stillness so total, so absolute, that the entire studio would go quiet when she was at her station, as if even the room understood it was in the presence of something it had not seen before. By the semi-finals, the audience had stopped watching the competition. They were watching Amara. For the final round, each contestant was given a single instruction: cook a dish that tells the story of your life. The other finalists produced technically dazzling plates, architectural presentations, imported ingredients, elaborate techniques designed to impress. Amara made pepper soup, her grandmother's pepper soup, but she made it the way only she could. Elevated, transformed, occupying the space between memory and mastery. She layered it with a complexity that took an entire childhood to understand. She plated it in a way that was somehow both ancient and completely new. Every ingredient chosen with intention. Every element a sentence in a story she had been living for 29 years. When the lead judge tasted it, he set down his spoon. He sat with it for a moment. Then he looked at Amara truly, looked at her face and her stillness and the quiet ferocity she had never once lost, and asked, "What is your story?" And for the first time in 5 years, in front of a live studio audience and rolling cameras, Amara told the truth. She told them about the kitchen where she had worked before sunrise for 5 years, about the recipes that carried another person's name, about being told her face was not suitable to be seen, about the apron she had placed on a desk, and the candle in November, and her grandmother's handwriting in a faded notebook. She spoke quietly, without bitterness, without a single note of performance. She spoke the way she cooked, because it was true, and because it needed to be said, and because she was finally done being silent. By the time she finished, people in the audience who had come to watch a cooking competition were wiping their eyes. The judges did not deliberate for long. Every score, every category, every judge, unanimous. Amara won Nigeria's top chef. The clip of her final speech aired on national television that night and was shared so many thousands of times, so rapidly, that by the following morning, her name was trending simultaneously in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. The comments poured in by the millions. I have never cried watching a cooking competition in my life until tonight. This woman's face is the most beautiful thing I have seen this entire year. Find out which restaurant hid her for 5 years and never eat there again. Patricia's documentary, which had been sitting in post-production, was rushed to completion and released within weeks. It included the 12 minutes of back kitchen footage, Amara alone, uncredited, building magic in the dark for people who were ashamed of her face. The world saw it. The world did not forgive La Maison d'Or. The development deal became 3 restaurants. The book, What the Fire Taught Me, hit bestseller lists in 6 countries within its first month and was optioned for a television adaptation before the paperback edition was printed. A cookware collaboration, a Netflix special, a mentorship foundation for young women in the culinary arts who had been told in one form or another that they did not have the right face for the industry. Amara built all of it in 18 months with the same focused quiet she had always carried, except now the world could see her doing it. She hired people who looked like her. She trained chefs who reminded her of the girl she had been, brilliant, overlooked, burning with something the industry hadn't yet learned to recognize. She put her own name above every door. And on the wall of every kitchen she owned, she had a single line painted in large, bold letters. The flame doesn't care what the pot looks like. Without Amara's recipes, La Maison d'Or collapsed slowly and then, as these things always do, all at once. Temi's Food sent the review scores into a free fall within the first 2 months. The regulars drifted away, the critics moved on, the social media posts were stunning, the actual dining experience was not. The documentary had not helped. Neither had the sustained public outrage. Within a year of Amara's firing, the restaurant that had once required 2 weeks advance booking was struggling to fill its tables on a Friday night. The owner, facing debts that were no longer manageable, began quietly looking for a buyer. He received one serious offer. Amara did not buy La Maison d'Or out of revenge. She said this clearly to every journalist who asked, and she was telling the truth. She bought it because it was a beautiful space in an exceptional location, and the price, given its destroyed reputation, was genuinely reasonable. But she would be dishonest if she said there was no sweetness in it. On the morning she took possession, she walked through the front entrance for the first time in her life. Not the service entrance, not the back door she had used for 5 years in the dark. Through the gold-framed front doors, in her ivory suit, with her birthmark in the full Lagos morning sun. The remaining staff stood in a line to receive her. At the end of that line stood Mr. Bankole. He had aged considerably. He could not hold her gaze. Amara walked the length of the room slowly. She touched the Italian linen. She stood in the kitchen doorway and breathed in the place she had poured 5 years of her life into. Then she turned to the staff and spoke clearly and without theater. We are going to do great things here. For most of you, nothing changes. I value talent and I value character. If you have either, you have a home. She paused. For those who made it their mission to make another human being feel less than human, you may collect your things. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. His name was Kofi, a quiet architect from Accra who had watched her documentary twice and then, entirely by coincidence, found himself at the bar of her Lagos restaurant on a Tuesday evening while in the city for a work project. He did not recognize her immediately. He simply noticed a woman at the far end of the bar writing in a worn notebook, completely absorbed, with the particular stillness of someone entirely at peace with who they are. The kind of stillness that is not emptiness, but its exact opposite, fullness, completeness. He asked the bartender who she was. The bartender smiled. That is the owner. He introduced himself. They talked about food and architecture and grandmothers and the particular loneliness of being gifted in ways the world doesn't immediately know how to value. They talked until the restaurant was empty and the staff were quietly cleaning around them, and neither of them had noticed the time passing. At the end of the evening, he looked at her face, at the birthmark she had spent years being instructed to hide, and said something she had never once in her entire life heard another person say. It looks like a continent, like a map of somewhere worth traveling to." She laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a careful laugh. A full, free, completely unguarded laugh, the kind she hadn't let herself have in longer than she could remember. So what do we take from Amara's story? Not that talent always wins immediately. It doesn't. Amara spent 5 years invisible. Not that the world is fair. It isn't. Beautiful mediocrity gets promoted over brilliant, overlooked people every single day. What we take is something harder, more honest, and more important than either of those things. The world will find many reasons to keep you in the back kitchen. Your face, your background, your accent, your body, your gender, the neighborhood you were raised in, the school you couldn't afford, the connections you were not born into. And here is what those years in the back kitchen cannot touch. What you build in the dark. Amara cooked for 5 years in a kitchen where no one with power was watching. And in those 5 years, in those quiet, invisible, uncredited years, she built something so real, so deep, so absolutely excellent that when the world finally turned to look, it could not look away. Your invisible years are not wasted years. They are the years you become unbeatable. Keep cooking, even when they close the door, even when they take the credit, even when they tell you that your face is not the right kind of face for the world to see. Because the day is coming when you walk back through the front door. And when you do, you will own the whole building. That was the story of Amara. And if something in that story found you, if something landed in a place you weren't expecting, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because that feeling is not an accident. That feeling is information. This is what we do here at The Gracious Voice. We find the stories that the world almost buried. We tell them with the weight and the care and the grace they deserve, and we send them out into the world hoping they find exactly the person who needs them most. If that person was you today, I am so glad you are here. Here is your call to action, and I mean every word of it. Down below, subscribe to The Gracious Voice right now. Not later, now. Because we release new stories every single week. Stories of real people who faced real darkness and built real light. And you do not want to miss a single one. Like this video if Amara's story moved something in you. That one tap tells the algorithm to show this story to more people who need it. You could change someone's day or their life with a single thump. Leave a comment below. Tell us, what are you building in the dark right now? What is the back kitchen you are working in, waiting for the world to finally see you? We read every single comment in this community. We see you. Share this video with one person, just one. The friend who is about to give up, the sister who was told she's not enough, the young man who was passed over again. Send them Amara. Let her story do what stories do. And remember, whatever room they have put you in, whatever door they have closed on you, whatever they have said about your face, your name, your worth, the flame does not care what the pot looks like. It hits them all the same. This is The Gracious Voice, and we will see you in the next story.